One year, Renee and I went to San Francisco to do some sightseeing. That whole area had a ton of spots we wanted to explore. Chinatown, the Golden Gate Bridge, take a ride on the trolley, Fisherman's Wharf, and, of course, a ghost tour. But the feature presentation of our stay was our visit to Alcatraz. Alcatraz was first discovered in 1775 by Spanish explorer Juan Miguel de Ayala. He named the island La Isla de los Alcatrazes, meaning Pelican Island, which is much easier to say. In the beginning, the island was home to the very first operating lighthouse on the Pacific Ocean. At about the same time, it developed into a military base in 1847. It was the ideal spot for a military post due to the perfect view of San Francisco. At that time, they had an immense need to safeguard San Francisco due to the massive migration of folks to the area during the gold rush. Unfortunately, this wasn't as efficient of a base as they originally thought, since it took a lot of time and money to maintain. A huge part of the sizable expense was due to anything needed on the island had to be transported by boat 1.5 miles across the San Francisco Bay. So it was before Amazon. After that, they turned the island into a military prison during the Civil War. Later on after the war, the island was unused for several years. Fast forward to 1934. Due to the enormous crime rate during the gangster era, Alcatraz was renovated to house the most hardened criminals and opened its doors to civilian convicts. Well, so to speak. The impervious reformatory walls housed the worst of the worst. 1,576 murderers, thieves, sexual offenders, gangsters, and inmates that escaped other prisons made up the population of convicts in this literal hellhole. When operational costs got to be too high, Alcatraz closed its doors for good in 1963. The island was abandoned until 1972, when Congress agreed to preserve Alcatraz as one of the greatest national historic landmarks of America within the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. Many inmates and several guards were killed during its time as a prison. Riots, escape attempts, suicide, and prisoner-on-prisoner assaults made up the majority of the deaths on the island. With such a violent and tragic history, it's obvious to see why Alcatraz is said to be one of the most haunted places in America. Prison guards, convicts, night watchmen, visitors, maintenance, and tour guides have all reported paranormal activities in Alcatraz. The most haunted spots in Alcatraz are the warden's house, the hospital, the laundry room, and cell block C, where many prisoners died during the 1946 escape attempt. According to paranormal investigators, prisoners, and guards, Cell Block D, which was solitary confinement, is the spot with the highest paranormal activity. It's said that the air in Cell Block D is 20 to 30 degrees colder than the rest of the prison. Once the windowless door was slammed shut in these cells, the inmate was enclosed in total darkness. A former prison guard said that when a prisoner was sent to Cell Block D, they always screamed uncontrollably as soon as the door slammed behind them, and all they could see was pitch black. Several prisoners claimed that they weren't alone in these cells, and that they oftentimes saw glowing eyes inside the cell with them. There was one prisoner that complained about seeing the glowing eyes and screamed throughout the entire night. In the morning, he was found dead with red handprints around his neck. Bizarre sounds, people being touched and pushed, odd smells, crying, screaming, orbs, shadow figures, full-body apparitions, and possession have all been reported multiple times. This site is a significant paranormal hotspot, and we couldn't wait to explore it. All right, you ready? Let's do this. We took one of the famous San Francisco trolleys as close as we could to the pier where the ferry leaves for Alcatraz. The trolley ride was pretty badass. We boarded the boat and pushed off. The ferry ride took about 15 minutes. The water was rough and made the boat sway back and forth. Renee started turning green. I got a little nauseous myself. We didn't throw up, though. Thank God, that would have sucked. The boat docked on the island and we disembarked. We walked the same path prisoners did when they arrived. It was so surreal. The guardhouses had cutouts of guards in them that kind of freaked us out a couple of times. The tour was a self-guided tour where you could use either your phone or one of their little walkie-talkie-like devices with headphones to tell you about each area of the prison. We used the walkie thing. It was just easier. And I've got enough apps on my phone already. The air in the prison was damp and musty. It had that old building smell, like from the 50s. The air also seemed very heavy. On our way to the beginning of the tour, we passed several cells. They were 5 feet wide, 9 feet long, and 7 feet high. They seemed a little small for one person. Well, it's not supposed to be Club Med. We started out in the prisoner registration area, the first place cons would go when they arrived here to pick up their prison clothes, shoes, toiletries, etc. We didn't pick up on anything or capture anything here. As we moved through the cutoff to the next area, I stumbled a little. It felt like somebody kicked my foot into my other foot. I turned around quickly to see who was tripping me, but no one was around. I was ready to whip somebody's ass. Since Renee was the closest one, I asked her if she did it. She said, "No, of course not." Confused and pissed off, I continued on. We came to a hallway with several floors of cells, known as Broadway. As we walked along this massive row of cells, we both heard what sounded like someone laughing hysterically. There were some other folks that heard it too. I could tell by the look on their face. I asked them, "Did you hear that laugh?" "Yeah, was that someone on the tour?" I did the "I don't know" arms, shook my head and said, I don't think so. It was pretty fucking creepy, whatever it was. Our next stop on the tour was the recreation area. It was a place of reward for prisoners who followed the rules. They could exercise, play dominoes, socialize, and get some fresh air. But this privilege had to be earned. We stepped out into the massive yard and walked around. As we were strolling through it, Renee yelled, "Ow! Fuck!" "What happened?" I asked. "I felt a sharp pain, like someone pinched my ass." She rubbed her butt, and we continued looking around the rec area. As we were surveying the yard, she yelped again. "Ow! You fuckers! Cut that shit out!" "Again?" I asked. "Yeah, let's get out of here. My ass is gonna be one big bruise before this is over." We walked back up the stairs and through the door to the main building. Our next stop was D Block, solitary confinement. This is where the worst inmates at Alcatraz ended up. D Block is considered by most paranormal investigators to be where the majority of activity occurs in the prison. 4 of the cells on this block are haunted. The temperature here was markedly colder. As we looked into each dark cell, we felt uneasy, like we were being watched or judged. We arrived at the cell 14D, the most haunted cell in D Block. I decided to go in and sit on the toilet, like I was taking a shit, 'cause I like potty humor. After I sat down, Renee laughed and took a picture. Right after that, I felt a breath in my left ear. Then there was a whisper in my ear that said, "Get out." My eyes widened and my smile disappeared. Then I heard what sounded like fingernails scratching the wall very hard to my left. I sprang up and said, "Nope." I quickly bounded out of the cell. On my way out, I felt something push me in the back. It made me skip a step, but I recovered. After I got outside the cell, I turned around, expecting to see someone, but there was no one. Little did I know that the picture Renee took captured an orb to my left, the same side I was feeling and hearing everything. Coincidence? Meh. Next, we went to the library. It was a big, bright, open room. There were a few books left on the scattered bookshelves, but not many. We walked around and listened. Nothing happened. We were directed to the cell where one of the guards were held hostage during an escape attempt in 1946. The guard had hid the keys the inmates needed to escape and wouldn't tell them where they were. He paid for his silence with his life, but their bid to escape was crushed. Surprisingly, we didn't feel or hear anything. I did pick up a whiff of smoke in the area. It smelled like paper burning instead of wood. Maybe it was a residual smell from the uprising. Or maybe somebody was just firing one up. We went back to the cutoff area. This area was where the Marines dropped frag grenades down during the Battle of Alcatraz. The small pockmarks on the floor show where they exploded. I snapped a pic of the pockmarks and got what looks like a mist on the right side of the shot. After looking at the picture and noticing the mist, I stuck my hand in the area of the mist. It was a little cooler and felt like a heavy fog. Next, we went to the cells of the 3 inmates that inspired the movie Escape from Alcatraz. Great movie, by the way. The fake head laying in the cot was eerie. It was very lifelike. Incredible work, considering what they had to work with. MacGyver would have been impressed. As I leaned in closer to get a shot of the inside of the cell, I was shoved into the bars hard and hit my head. I spun around and angrily said, "Who pushed me?" Several people standing behind me held up their hands and shook their head. Renee, who was also behind me, said, "I didn't see anyone push you, but it did look like you were pushed or pulled into the bars." Rubbing my forehead, we went to the next stop of the tour. We went to the utility quarter the 3 men used to climb up the pipes to the roof for the escape. I walked in and immediately felt something was wrong. I felt heavy and I was getting sleepy. I don't know why. I got plenty of sleep the night before and I wasn't drinking. Yet, I stopped for a moment and looked at the wall. I felt fixated on one spot for some reason. My body started to get warm, even though it was cold as hell. The next thing I know, Renee is talking to me frantically. Perry, relax. Just calm down. Everything's gonna be okay now." I wasn't sure what the hell she was talking about. Just a second ago, I was staring at the wall in the utility quarter, then turned around and talked to Renee. Yeah, I was totally confused. According to Renee, this is what happened. Renee saw me looking at something on the wall. She asked me what I was looking at. I didn't answer. She said, "Hey baby, you okay?" Still, no response. She put her hand on my shoulder and shook it a little. She said my head spun around and I had a look of intense anger and hatred on my face. Both my fists were in a tight ball. She thought I was gonna hit her. I've never hit her. Well, not in anger. She backed off and started talking me down. That's when I came back to reality. It was really weird. On top of that, my back was burning, like a sunburn. We went to an area with fewer people and I raised my shirt for her to check my back. She gasped loudly. I asked, "Well, what? What is it?" She took a picture of my back and showed it to me. There were 3 red scratch marks on the side of my back. I blurted out, "Holy shit, I got fucking scratched." Not wanting to have to explain it to anyone, I quickly lowered my shirt. What I think happened was, I was oppressed for a minute or so. I don't know by who or what, but that's the best explanation I can come up with. Needless to say, we hastily got the hell out of that area. The burning sensation lasted well after we got back to the hotel room. Next, we went to the cafeteria. A lot of violence has happened here. Several cons were shivved in this room. Most lived, but some died. Imagine 200 hardened criminals in one room, each armed with a metal knife, fork, and spoon. Nothing good can come of that. While walking around, I saw something out of the corner of my eye move in the kitchen area. I looked closer. I asked Renee to see if she could see anything moving back there. She looked, then said, "There, by the door on the left." It looked like a misty apparition of someone dressed as a cafeteria worker. I quickly snapped a picture. I didn't see anything in the room on the photo. Only Renee saw it. Chalk another one up to personal experience. We went back down the hall called Broadway. The crowd was thinning out rapidly as it was getting late. As we passed one of the open cells, Renee said she felt something was in there. She went in and sat down inside the cell. I took a picture. We were talking about the activity we had experienced so far. When we were ready to leave, I put out my hand to help her up. She was starting to get pretty tired. When I pulled her arm, she started rising, but suddenly fell back into the seat. I saw her hair lift up. I asked if her hair got caught on the back of the chair. She said, "No, it's more like a stool than a chair. There's no back on it." Something didn't want her to leave and pulled her hair to make her sit back down. At this point, we had both had enough. We left the main building and headed for the dock. Yep, we GTFO'd. So much shit was happening, it didn't seem real, but it was. It was the most frightened and shocked I've ever been. I'll never forget our dark and unpredictable expedition at Alcatraz.